Welcome everyone to History Gone Wilder, part of Have History Will Travel. I am your host, the Wilder Historian, and today I wanted to do a Who Was Better video and pit two of the Army of Northern Virginia's Corps commanders against one another, Thomas Stonewall Jackson and Ambrose Powell Hill. Let's see who was better. First, let's look at their divisional commands. Thomas Stonewall Jackson basically only commanded a division at the beginning of his Valley campaign. After that, he commanded at least two divisions within the Valley, so although it wasn't listed as a corps, it will be considered one by Civil War standards. With that in mind, let's look at Jackson during the Battle of Kernstown, where he commanded a division in combat. During that engagement, both sides made plenty of mistakes, but as far as Jackson goes, he mismanaged his brigades and lost contact with parts of them throughout the battle. Kernstown ended in a victory for the Union, and Jackson was forced to pull back up the Shenandoah Valley. The next battle in the Valley campaign was McDowell, where Jackson's force lost more defending a hill than the Federals did attacking it. Jackson didn't want to fight on a Sunday and thus did not commit himself to the battle, allowing the Union forces to fall back, resulting in Stonewall having to chase after them. After McDowell, Jackson acquired the help of Richard Ewell's division, and so I will consider him basically commanding a corps from that moment on. Through Jackson's quick and mysterious movements, he fooled the Union High Command into thinking he was leaving the Valley, which prompted the Union High Command to pull troops out of the Valley. Then Stonewall would reappear and defeat the smaller forces left in the Shenandoah Valley. He used his numerically superior force to overwhelm the enemy, but near the end of the campaign a much larger force confronted him, with forces under James Shields, John C. Fremont, and Nathaniel Banks. He was able to hold off each commander, but the quick marching and constant fighting wore out his troops. Straggling ran rampant, and his troops were a shell of their former selves. Now, let's look at A.P. Hill's divisional command. He got the Light Division right after the Peninsula Campaign and led it into combat during the 7 days. Jackson's lateness during the first of the 7 days resulted in Hill having to attack entrenched Union forces with no support on his left flank, but Hill held his brigades together. Unfortunately, his brigades did attack piecemeal, which made the attacks less effective. However, he did improve. Over the next several days during the campaign, he used the brigades in the Light Division to their best ability by being close to the action so that he could closely monitor their progress. His tenaciousness during the 7 days endeared him to Robert E. Lee, and he gained a great reputation as a superb commander from that series of battles. During the 7 days, Jackson performed poorly, including being late and sometimes not attacking at all. After the 7 days, Hill fought under Jackson, so I'll be talking about their actions together, Hill as a divisional commander and Jackson as a corps commander. During the lead-up to the Battle of Cedar Mountain, Jackson's tight-lipped attitude toward informing his subordinates of plans brought tensions between the two men. From all accounts, the orders issued to Hill from Jackson did not make it to Hill, but Jackson held it against Hill and reprimanded him for not following orders, even though Jackson changed his orders to some division commanders without informing Hill. At Cedar Mountain, Jackson entered battle without Hill, and was on the verge of defeat when Hill rushed his division to the front and saved the day for Jackson. At the Second Battle of Bull Run, A.P. Hill's division, as well as all of Jackson's wing of the Army of Northern Virginia, sat behind an unfinished railroad cut. Hill's division endured numerous attacks by Union forces from the Army of Virginia under John Pope. Despite the request for support, Jackson withheld his reserves until it was nearly too late. Some of the Confederate soldiers had to throw rocks at the enemy because the reserve would not be brought forward to either add weight to Hill's line or replace that division. For Jackson's actions at Second Bull Run, he didn't offer assistance to Hill when called upon, and then on the last day of the engagement, when Longstreet's divisions were pushing the Federals, Lee ordered Jackson to move forward to prevent Pope from rearranging troops to fight Longstreet. Jackson remained still for 2 hours, giving the Union enough time to make their escape. Although Jackson's troops were exhausted from 2 days of fighting, Lee just wanted him to move forward, and he failed to do so in a reasonable time. Jackson and Hill butted heads, and it resulted in Hill being removed from the command of his division on the eve of the Battle of Antietam. Hill was able to convince Jackson to let him back in command until the campaign was over. However, at Antietam, Jackson didn't do anything astounding, but Hill did save the day for the Confederacy by force marching his troops to the battlefield and throwing back Ambrose Burnside's troops. Admittedly, Hill did throw his brigades in somewhat piecemeal at Antietam, but that was the nature of the situation. He deployed them as soon as they got to the battlefield. At Fredericksburg, neither Hill nor Jackson were at their best. Stonewall's line was broken, and it was Hill's division that broke. The placement of troops was off, and neither Jackson nor Hill noticed. Ultimately, Hill should have been the one to monitor the placement of his brigades, and his lack of attention could be due to him losing a child right before the battle, but nonetheless, it is a blemish on his military record. At the Battle of Chancellorsville, Jackson's corps marched along windy roads to hit the flank of the Union Army that had crossed the Rappahannock and Rapidan rivers. Although the march itself was an incredible feat, the timing was off. Union forces attacked Hill's division as it marched to the Federal flank, which delayed the Light Division. So when Jackson was ready to launch the attack, only Rhodes and Colson's divisions were in place. When Hill's division did make it to the jumping-off point, he became the support for the other two divisions, which had been placed too close together, and once the division in front hit the enemy's lines, the second division bumped into the first, creating a traffic jam of sorts. Hill's division was able to make it through Rhodes and Colson's divisions and continue the attack until it got too dark. Of course, Jackson would be wounded and die of pneumonia a little later. Upon the death of Stonewall, Hill would be put in command of a corps. Hill's first trial as a corps commander was the largest battle on the North American continent. At the Battle of Gettysburg, it was Hill's corps that first made contact with the Union cavalry outside of the town. He sent 2 of his 3 divisions on that scouting/supply expedition, which under normal circumstances would have been odd, but it allowed the Confederates to gain the advantages of winning the first day at Gettysburg, despite Lee not wanting to commit to battle at that point in the campaign. On the second and third day, miscommunication occurred between Hill and Longstreet, with Hill believing that Longstreet would command part of his troops, not himself. As a first outing for the corps commander, Hill was, in general, unimpressive. After Gettysburg, the Bristoe Station campaign took place, where Hill suffered his worst defeat as a corps commander. He was still thinking as a division commander, and didn't see the whole picture when committing his troops, and ended up running into a trap. Lee was obviously disappointed in Hill, but that was the last of his large mistakes. During the Overland campaign against Ulysses S. Grant, Hill was able to place troops at critical locations and was not above joining in the fight, like at the Widow Tap Field, where he manned an artillery piece when Union forces pushed back his tired troops. Hill's line had held, and he was waiting on Longstreet's corps to replace his own when his beleaguered troops were attacked. Despite the exhaustion, Hill maneuvered his divisions to occupy the center of the Confederate line and throw back attempts at severing the Confederate battle line. At the Battle of Spotsylvania Courthouse, Hill was debilitated by prostatitis and did little commanding, but he returned to his corps to block Grant at Cold Harbor, placing his troops in great positions to resist the Union attack. At the Siege of Petersburg, it was Hill who turned back numerous Union attempts to cut the rail line to the southwest of the city. He knew how to get the most out of his already depleted ranks and was able to position his divisions at critical points of attack. He would be killed shortly before Lee retreated from Petersburg and Richmond. In all honesty, Hill performed better as a corps commander and division commander than Jackson. Jackson's limited time as a division commander causes Hill to far surpass him as a divisional commander. But if we look at Jackson's time as a corps commander, his Valley campaign stands out as his only bright star, and it came with the horrible consequences of running his men ragged and depleting his ranks through forced marches, which resulted in straggling. During the 7 days, no one can defend his actions, where he essentially was either late or made no effort to attack at all. He did hold off the Union Army of Virginia at Second Bull Run, but his refusal to reinforce or support Hill's division resulted in a breakthrough. At Antietam, he threw brigades in piecemeal to a great degree, and at Fredericksburg, his line was the one that broke. At Chancellorsville, he maneuvered his corps beautifully to hit the flank of the Union Army, but his divisions were not properly spaced, and this resulted in his corps losing its punching power. Hill, on the other hand, excelled as a corps commander, moving his divisions quickly and placing them at critical locations. He used solid tactics to overcome his numerical inferiority when confronting the corps of the Army of the Potomac under Grant, and held that army at bay during the Siege of Petersburg. In my mind, I see no competition. Hill was the superior commander, even counting his failure at Bristoe Station and the breakthrough at Fredericksburg. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. Is my assessment fair? Do you agree with my argument? Also, put down in the comments who you would like to see me put up against one another. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a great day.